Greetings everyone, peace to you all.
Hello, this is Edis, your autonomous base administrator.
Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they're excellent and commendable. Today we will be reviewing Pragmata, the new intellectual property by renowned developer Capcom. Players play as Hugh, a systems engineer sent to investigate communication issues on a lunar mining outpost on the moon, who is assisted by
I am DI-03367.
Diana, an android Pragmata. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, I played the game on standard, and prior to this review, I have finished this game to the credits. As far as the technical state of the game is concerned, the game ran okay. I had some trouble with the DLSS for frame generation, but turning it off resolved many issues for me. I also had some frame drops in more open areas or when there were specific textures in the area, which was a shame, but not game-breaking. But without further ado, let's jump in. The fun aspects of Pragmata become pretty clear very quickly. The gameplay loops are very simple but effective. Combat, exploration, and base interactions with Diana form the bulk of the gameplay. Base interactions are cute, and they do serve as interesting character development for both Hugh and Diana. I often found myself wanting to continue to just press X to see what else they would chat about, but the game cleverly has you stop after a few sessions in a row, perhaps so you won't exhaust all the conversations at one time. My main complaint was that I kept hoping for some mini-games where I could play with Diana or some dialogue options to roleplay more. However, later in the game, there actually was a minigame, so I guess they gave me something. Exploration was surprisingly satisfying. Upgrade components seemed both valuable and yet also plentiful, which was kind of weird, but that's how it felt to me. The desire to look around for upgrade materials hidden in weird places kept me exploring, even if the hiding places did not feel particularly challenging. Although there were a lot of obvious hiding places, some items did elude me despite me looking, so overall it felt like the right amount of challenge without being unfun. There is some minor platforming, but I'm going to stick it in here with exploring. Most platforming seems optional and mainly for exploring. The platforming is not difficult, and the thruster upgrades never seem required. The combat and hacking is probably the highlight of the gameplay. Despite being a third-person shooter, the gameplay in terms of shooting and hacking never got old. The player controlling Hugh in a typical third-person action-adventure shooter-type gameplay style is fairly standard. But the hacking, while a relatively simple addition, makes things significantly more complex. To me, the hacking adds a whole other layer that makes the enemies feel more distinct than they otherwise would have. The way that you need to hack every enemy to open up their weaknesses really makes it difficult to just shoot your way through the game without engaging with the hacking system. What amazed me was how they were able to continually create new variations or new challenges for the hacking, and that kept the combat from getting stale. Bosses and mini-bosses generally have a gimmick that is introduced earlier in regular enemies. The bosses are fun, but not particularly difficult. As far as game progression is concerned, the game does a good job of giving players different ways to progress. Most of the types of progression are very similar. In almost all cases, it involves collecting different resources and trading them for upgrades. You can upgrade hacking, your pistol, your defensive stats, as well as the capabilities and numbers on various equipment. I don't want to list them all here or spoil them, but the game keeps you feeling like there is plenty of constant progress. You can also upgrade the shelter, which is your base, but this occurs more according to the story progress than anything you would do. I thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I looked forward to every session. So overall, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for fun factor. As far as educational value, Pragmata has plenty. Motor skills are not really developed in terms of response time and sheer reflexes. You don't need to have lightning-fast parrying. Both Hugh and enemies are slow and clunky. Yet, the need to move and shoot and hack all at once makes things a little more challenging. Hacking initially seems simple, but unlike moving and shooting, hacking feels frenetic. There are definitely strategies involved in terms of what nodes you want to use when hacking, who to hack, and how many times you want to hack, but you need to do them all as quickly as possible so that you can go back to shooting and dodging. The different types of weapons Hugh can pick up, like attack, utility, and defensive weapons, as well as some mods you can equip for different builds, create some interesting strategies. The nodes available to Diana, like Decode, Multi-Hack, and Freeze, make hacking much more tactical as well. There's not a lot of factual knowledge here in terms of science, which is a little disappointing. Still, despite the main gimmick of combat and hacking together simultaneously being a simple idea, executing it consistently feels like it is training your multitasking and executive functions. So overall, I'm going to give Pragmata 4 stars for educational value. The artistic style of Pragmata is very attractive and well done. Much of the way the buildings are laid out is very impressive, and the way that Luna filament printing is animated is very neat. The animations of enemies are quite varying, and I particularly like the hacked or exposed look of enemies when Diana is successful. Aesthetically, the overall gray ceramic or carbon look has a lot of interesting color contrast with Diana or Luna filament printing materials. The music is mostly somber piano pieces, giving the whole game a generally melancholy and lonely kind of atmosphere. The voice acting was generally pretty good, with David Menkins portraying a likable but relatively clueless Hugh, and Grace Saif also manages to pull off a realistic and talkative Diana without edging into annoying Navi territory.
If something happened to you, I'd be in real trouble.
In real trouble? Why?
The plot was a relatively simple milieu type structure, but it's fine. Like many video games, the setting does more work in terms of world building, with the cradle being an interesting idea. I don't like it when games lean on video recordings to set up the motivations and backstories for antagonists and such, but I guess overall it wasn't too bad. For the story, the interactions between Hugh and Diana do much of the heavy lifting, and overall they are quite sweet. The ending was not a surprise twist or anything particularly clever, but it was still moving and a solid conclusion. As far as sales numbers are concerned, Pragmata sold over 2 million copies within 16 days. While it's still too early to talk about awards, Capcom COO Rob Dyer has hinted that Pragmata is only the beginning of a new franchise, suggesting that there may indeed be sequels down the line. While the game is not perfect, overall I'm going to assign Pragmata 4 stars for its cultural value. There's not a whole lot of negative content in Pragmata. There's no drugs, no sex, and no alcohol. There is some mild profanity, but in modern times, it's not really a lot. There's obviously violence, but aside from some of the initial setup, the violence is mostly robotic or against androids. There are some horror elements as well that I won't spoil. Surprisingly, there's a lot of positive content here. The interactions between Hugh and Diana portray some understanding and empathetic parenting interactions, even if they are not particularly deep. Hugh's aversion of family and kids is challenged, and overall this is clearly a dad game.
Nah, I wouldn't trade it for a thing.
ESRB rates this as T for teen, which I think is reasonable. Honestly, the game is probably fine for younger teens, as long as you are okay with the profanity.
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
The messages of the game are generally relatable and fairly safe, even if they are not strong or powerful. For more analysis on the themes of the game, check out my upcoming biblical themes video for this game. Overall, I'm going to give Pragmata 4 stars for spiritual value. For the time poor, Pragmata can be completed in about 10 to 12 hours. For the time rich, there are optional things to do, like exploring more to find upgrades, going into red zones, or trying the training simulations. I honestly enjoyed all 3 of these types of activities, particularly the training missions. There's also a harder mode to unlock, and there are special sim pods for getting the secret ending, which is kind of unfortunate. Although I wanted the secret ending, I didn't want to invest the time required. I did appreciate the ability to fast travel back and forth to the shelter and the shortcuts, but having to save only at the shelter was, while understandable, slightly annoying. Pragmata retails for $59.99 USD, which feels expensive, but I guess I should be happy they didn't charge $69.99. While financially it seems a little pricey, I did like the short and sweet aspect of the game. I think a little bit more optional content would have been nice, or even better, no optional content but maybe a lower entry price, like $40. Overall, based on the content value, narrative accessibility, and asking price, I'm going to give Pragmata 3 stars for cost. Pragmata was a game I almost skipped. Hacking during combat sounded like a gimmick that I didn't really want to try, and the IP didn't seem particularly interesting. When I found out it was a short, single-player adventure with a pretty solid narrative though, I decided I needed to give it a shot, and I'm glad I did. The hacking turned out to be way more fun than I expected, and while I do feel that Hugh and Diana weren't given enough time together, overall, the relationship was refreshing and more positive than in many other dad games. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assigned Pragmata the rating of Genre Gem. That's all I have for you in this video.
Let's go!
bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, sharing the video with your friends, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.